it's not in L.A. They should still be in San Diego. And when you think about it, and you probably don't know this, Shay, but I'm gonna bring you up to speed on it. In terms of pro football, the Raiders are the number one team in Los Angeles in terms of pro football.
Yeah, I did not know that.
And then the Dallas Cowboys are slide right in there too. So it's a lot of Dallas travels well regardless, right? But it's on the West Coast. The Dallas Cowboys got it on lock with the Raiders. Then the Rams, then the Chargers. But USC is ahead of them as well. So it's like, that's why you're going to see that.
Yeah. That is surprising to me. I knew Cowboys fans traveled well. Obviously, they're called America's team for a reason. I feel like they're scattered all over the U.S., but I had no idea that they were behind even their hometown team, or ahead of, I should say, their hometown team. Look, a lot of issues for the Cowboys, okay? There are. But at the end of the day, they figured out a way to win. It was a 56-yard field goal by Greg Zuerlein to win it. And so here's Mike McCarthy on what happened and the clock management that was a little questionable at the end of the game.
The clock situation just to the end was different. I've never had a clock go off the board on me like that. So, the second down, we're trying to chip away and just get a shorter field goal, and so we were going to attempt a third down play, and then kicking on fourth was the time frame we were in, 17 seconds, I think. So we were right on the threshold. We get into these 2-minute drills, you have thresholds, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 17 seconds. So we were right at the threshold there of our operation. And, one of our players came off that, shouldn't have come off, and just communication there. So then we were just going to run it down. But the clock I was watching went off the board. And then, the clock Kellen had, I think he said a camera, he got blocked by a camera guy. So the communication was great from up top. And, and obviously, you want to call that timeout between 3 and 4 seconds.
Well, that's good. As long as they had some sort of communication, they didn't get to necessarily, you got two different clocks, but they were able to still communicate to get in a position to kick a field goal. It wasn't a complete disaster, but it's the Dallas Cowboys and it's Mike McCarthy. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to dissect clock management at the end of a game when clearly he just gave us the reasoning behind why they were in such a difficult situation then.
I feel like two teams yesterday just really shot themselves in the foot with penalties. So you talk about Seattle. So many penalties. And then you talk about the Chargers, too. 12 penalties for 99 yards. Even the touchdown by Justin Herbert was a holding penalty. Things like that allow teams like Dallas to win these games. But I give Greg Zuerlein a lot of credit, right? He missed 2 field goals week 1.
Yeah.
Left a lot of points on the board for them to lose that game that people felt like they should have won. For them to make a 56-yard field goal to close it, Greg DeLay came through.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that the Cowboys needed to do, Shay, going into this game was figure out their run game. They got about 200-plus yards in the run game. Maybe it wasn't all from Ezekiel Elliott. Some was for 100, plus was from Pollard. But when you combine that together, you win a lot of games if you're rushing for over 200 yards in a game.
Can I just say this? And you obviously played in the league. I did not. You're a professional athlete. I was not. But Tony Pollard looked like the better back yesterday as opposed to Ezekiel Elliott. Like, he was more explosive. Obviously, he had more yardage. Like, he looked like the premier back, not Ezekiel Elliott in this game.
Well, I just think it's what they're probably, as the course of the season goes on, you'll see a somewhat of a two-headed monster backfield. You saw it in week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with him and Pollard. You saw it in week 2 against the Chargers. You'll see it continue to evolve. And then when it gets down to it, come playoff time, Zeke will be the full carry. He'll be the full back that'll be toting the rock.
But, Key, what is it that seems different about Zeke? Because I thought everything you hear about him in the offseason, he's in the best shape of his life. He feels good. Just feels like he hasn't gotten off. And granted, 2 games, right?
He only had 13 carries. So when you only touch the ball 13 times, you're not going to really get – you're splitting carries now. Between the 2 backs, they carried the ball probably a total of 28 times. That's usually one guy. But when you splitting it down the middle, it's kind of hard to get into a rhythm. He ripped off probably about 70, 75 yards in those 13 totes, which is a good average, which is still good. He was able to touch the ball out of the backfield as an outlet, the safety valve at times for Dak Prescott. I don't mind a two-headed monster. It just at some point in time, you got to be able to have a dude who's the bell cow down the stretch, and I think Zeke will be that guy.
Eventually. But right now, it looks like it might be going the other way. Okay, we asked you to call in on the Dr. Pepper call-in line, most impressive performance or win in week 2. Zach's in Madison with something to say. Good morning to you, Zach.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
What's going on?
So
after week 2, Again, KJM. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests, join us on the Goodyear hotline. If you want to give us a call on the Dr. Pepper call-in line, it's 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. We're asking you, what was the most impressive win or performance of week 2? Quickly, before we get into some of these calls, guys, because the phone lines are blowing up. Last night's game between Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson finally gets the best of Mahomes. After 4 tries, he gets a dub. What was your biggest takeaway from last night?
Just the way Lamar played. Beating the Kansas City Chiefs late in the fourth quarter, obviously, the drive, as I like to call it, and just how he played. You know, everybody's talking about they went in there shorthanded or came into the game shorthanded, and, you know, for the most part, Kansas City was at full strength, and they still came out on the end of a W.
I walked away thinking, how long is this type of play by Lamar Jackson sustainable? Right? Considering all the pieces that they're missing, 15 players in the IR. I mean, Marcus Peters to their secondary, a lot of issues. You got Latavius Murray, you got a lot of guys that just kind of signed on to the team. I give them a ton of credit, but how long is that type of play by Lamar Jackson sustainable is a legit question you have to ask yourself if you're a Ravens fan.
Well, I feel like we've been asking that question. It seems like it's been sustainable, right? Like year after year for the Ravens.
I don't have no problem with his style of play.
Right.
Anytime you can account for 350 total yards of offense, I would like to take the 2 interceptions back, but, you know, that is what it is. But you account for that type of yardage plus 3 touchdowns, 2 in the air and 1 on the ground. If I gave those same numbers as passing statistics, people would jump for joy. But when you start putting it together, run game, pass game, that's what Baltimore wants to do. They should still be jumping for joy because that is dynamic. When you can have a playmaker being able to deliver the football, whether it's a jump pass or not, to be able to do that, then run the ball like a running back wide receiver / combo. If you don't want that, if you don't like that, you don't like ice cream.
There are some people.
I'm not hating on it. I like watching Lamar Jackson play. I mean, I do know last night watching Chris Jones and knowing Chris Jones, I know he got moved to the outside. They were picking on him left and right. They were abusing that. But my only question is, there's a difference between Latavius Murray or J.K. Dobbins, right? Like, so can those guys sustain that type of play? And if they can't sustain that type of play, then you need Lamar to do even more. That's my only concern.
Well, he was doing the most last night, but the Ravens still a 1-point narrow victory, still a victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Speaking of a narrow victory, the Cowboys had one of those yesterday over the Chargers. So we told you about a road